everyone. Welcome to the OnPoint podcast. Today, I had Donna Holder from Daiichi Sankyo. Donna has been a friend for a long time and has a wealth of experience in medical affairs strategy, field medical, and medical excellence. We discuss digital for medical affairs and how teams can instill best practices when implementing new technologies. I'm really excited for you all to hear about this. Welcome to OnPoint, the medical excellence podcast where we talk to pharma leaders about how to build highly effective medical affairs organizations. All right, welcome to the OnPoint podcast. Scott Thompson, co-CEO of Acceleration Point, and I'm so excited to have Donna Holder with us today. For years, medical affairs has been talking about this upcoming digital revolution and has been exploring technologies and data and how to use those for years. But in the last 12 months, one of the things that I've been seeing is that medical affairs teams have made this transition from exploring technologies to really starting to implement and execute and start using them. With this transition comes amazing new opportunities, but there's also this increased risk for medical affairs because often we haven't developed all of the capabilities and skills and some of the foundational things that are needed in order to make those technologies work. So in this episode, we're going to address why we're experiencing this acceleration in medical digital revolution, identify some of the challenges that medical affairs is facing while getting into that driver's seat, and then share some best practices that have led to effective technology implementation. And again, I've got Donna Holder here. Donna has had an impressive career with field medical, followed by key roles in AstraZeneca's headquarters. Donna has then led global medical excellence functions at Merck and served as the head of global MSL excellence at Daiichi Sankyo. And today, Donna is embracing this brand new challenge of being the global oncology medical affairs digital strategy and innovation lead. Wow, that's a big one, Donna, at Daiichi. Beyond her professional achievements, Donna is also so generous with her knowledge, her time, her expertise, having been a huge contributor at first to the MSL Society and now to the Medical Affairs Professional Society. So grateful to have you here, Donna. And I think we've known each other, for probably 12 years now?
Yeah, that's right. And thank you for the very generous introduction. And I'm so excited to talk about this topic. It's such a hot topic across the medical affairs professionals group and everybody that's been involved. And I do believe it was in Denver working on MSL standards. It was a fun project and working with you and other field medical leaders. So yes, 12 years.
That was amazing. Well, we've been through so much since then, and I'm really excited to be able to share with folks some of the new thinking and some of the new work that you've been doing. So maybe a good place for us to start is, I know across all of our clients, I'm seeing this really purposeful shift this year where medical affairs is going from experimenting and playing and sitting through workshops on what technology might be to actually having budgets and having people assigned and actually putting some of these platforms in place. Before we get into what those are and how to do it well, why do you think that change is occurring now?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. And first of all, you can't go to any conference where digital doesn't dominate. Over the past couple of years, we've seen omnichannel was a huge topic. It was the sessions were standing room only. Anything on artificial intelligence, again, folks were lining up to get in. Now, generative AI. So all of those topics are out there. They've been out there. And as you mentioned, we've moved from sitting in and listening and learning to action. And I think some of that is internal expectations. Those are increased. Leaders across the organization know that there's a lot of these digital tools. They're more educated and they want to get their hands wet and they see their medical affairs teams taking advantage of these. So the calls from vendors, there's an exponential amount and number of vendors that have tools, platforms, solutions for medical affairs. And I don't go without getting a couple of calls or emails asking for meetings. And in the beginning, I used to take those, but now I could spend my full-time job listening to vendors and hearing about these new innovations. So I think that there's just a lot of noise. And medical affairs leaders are more ready than ever because we've spent a lot of time listening and learning. I guess the last thing I would say too is that within the organization, a lot of roles are being created similar to mine. Mine was just created the last year. I'm focusing on digital, and we see that a lot across the medical affairs teams in the industry.
Wonderful. Well, let's tear those apart a little bit, right? So let's start with what some of those new internal expectations are. Tell us a little bit about why your role got invented. Why was it created? What is kind of the expectation that you're facing that others might also be facing?
I think within the medical affairs community, there's probably similar to the general population, there's some early adopters who have been learning about these technologies, have been using them in their daily lives. There's others that are just dabbling in it, and others that know nothing. And again, in leaders across the industry, particularly in medical affairs, they see that this technology, that these things are out there. So they want their teams to take advantage of them. They're seeing them in other parts of the organization where they are getting more efficient, they're being more innovative. And so these roles are opening up and are being created so that medical affairs can start to explore. There's a huge need for education and for somebody to focus on it. So for that reason, I think that's why these roles have been created.
Yeah. I'm seeing that a lot of medical affairs teams are being almost pulled into these conversations with their commercial partners, right? They're setting up automation systems, next best, omni-channel, things like that. They're finding new ways to leverage data and what they're collecting in Viva, and they want to see more collaboration. And it seems as though most medical affairs teams, they're not quite ready for that yet, right? Like it'd be pretty easy for somebody to turn on the tool, but what I'm finding is that a lot of times we haven't aligned on what those core processes are. For example, take next best or even omni-channel, where something that happens in one channel should trigger an activity in another. But if you haven't been able to sit down with a sales rep and an MSL and explain, hey, here's what you guys should be talking about regarding a particular institution or HCP, and hence when one of you does something, somebody else should be informed. If you can't explain it to a human, how can you possibly teach a computer to do this for you? But where are you guys with that? And what have you had to do in your role to help the organization be ready for some of these things?
I think that's a great point in terms of when we look at these new digital technologies and platform, and we'll probably get to this more, but when you talk to these vendors and they share the great things that these new tools can bring, it's often, again, the shiny toy where you feel like, oh, I want that. And it's not as easy as that. You have to realize, as you mentioned, there's a lot of processes that need to be put in place. And over my years, I've learned that you need to have these processes in place in order to teach the machine, as you said. And so I've made some mistakes where I bought that shiny toy and expected it to work, yet had to either implement it and it was not a success, or tried to implement it and I just couldn't because we don't have the processes that are in place. So now it's so important that we have to focus on what is it that we do, how do we do it, and then which is the best tool which will apply to that. And so I do think that's another reason these positions or these roles have been put in place, because you need somebody and you need a dedicated group or people that can focus on what do you actually need to do to get these new tools and platforms to work. And a lot of that is that ensuring that you've got these strong processes.
Love it. What has been maybe one of your early wins? What's one of those processes that you just saw, said, wow, if we applied a digital technology to this, we can make it more efficient, more effective. Where's that early win? Where's that first thing that you dug into?
Well, at St. Marian, this is probably one of the hottest topics in the medical affairs areas in the area of insights, because that's one that you can look at and say, well, if we could get a machine or something digital to help us with insights, because it's such a laborious process and it's very manual. And again, this is the hottest topic across medical affairs professionals, whether it's field medical or headquarters teams. We collect insights and spend a lot of time bringing those into the organization, whether it be through our MSLs or through ad boards or and any number of sources. But the traditional way has been to get a team of people to look through those, collate spreadsheets, look through each entry to look for patterns. And there's a number of tools out there. And so that's one area that I've worked in a couple different companies to look at how do we apply some technologies to make that faster. And I would say that's the one where I've learned we can't just apply a new tool. You have to
Mm.
look at your process to ensure that you've got strong processes, that you understand, what you are looking for in terms of insights, what you want to get out of them before you apply technology to it. So I'd say that's an area of focus. And
Yeah.
it wasn't an overnight quick win, but it is something that we are definitely progressing on.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we do a lot in the insight space. And I can tell you, we've got AI and we've got platforms that help do this. But our first step is always going back to the basics of what are your key insight questions? What decisions are you trying to make in the next 6 months, 8 months that you need data in order to feel more confident in making those decisions? And it's amazing how many times the teams that are generating insights, whether it's the field teams or social listening teams or advisory board teams, don't have those specific questions. And so, hence, they just go into these systems and think that there's this magic AI pill that will say, Tell me the most insightful thing that I should go act on, send." And it doesn't quite work that way.
Learn that the hard way.
Yeah, you have to learn the hard way, get it in. One of the things that you mentioned is that you're getting lots of calls, and there's all these vendors, they're all popping up. And part of it's because this new generation of AI, this large language model work, the ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, is making artificial intelligence more accessible, right? So more vendors are able to use it, they're applying it in different ways. But as you said, because of that, there's just so many coming out at us now. What are some of the things that you look for? What would you say as you're evaluating who would be a good partner that you prioritize in order to sift through all that?
That's a great question. As you said, there's so many and large companies, the ones that like everybody knows their name, and small companies, startup companies. And I guess there's a couple different things. And for me, it's being able, and this isn't always the case, is being able to demonstrate experience that a team has worked with medical affairs, understands the language, that they ask the right questions. That's so important because when you talk to these companies, a lot of them say, well, we've done this, but not necessarily always in medical affairs.
Mm.
And I wouldn't say that's an absolute that you have to because the technology is so new that there's not a lot of experience. But for those, I think that is very helpful when they do. And if they don't, if they haven't done it in medical affairs, if they've done some generative AI models with other parts of the organization, do they have a strong medical affairs staff or individuals in the company that have strong medical affairs experience? I think that's something. But that's one of the top things I look for. What experience do they have? Can they show examples of what they've done in medical affairs?
Yeah, love that. It's somebody has to play that role. Right? And so best case, a lot of folks, right? Everybody from the medical affairs team to the vendor to the people working on the project all know medical affairs, but somebody has to go, wow, okay, we have this tool and it might be the same tool commercial uses, it might be the same tool other industries use, but if you don't know how to apply it and use it to achieve something for medical affairs, it becomes overwhelming. And then you run into compliance issues, you run into confusion in the organization. So I think that definitely having somebody who isn't just talking about the features of all the things the tool can do, but here's how we can use it to generate better data or have better thought leader engagements or find more actionable insights is really important.
And the other thing too is just the experience with different companies, and every company is different. So being able to understand how to navigate within a small company, within a big company. And I do really look for them asking the right questions around what is our technology infrastructure? Where is the status of our processes? How strong are they so that they know what they're working with as well? When they don't ask those questions, you start
Mm.
to wonder how much they've really done this and how much they know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's another really good point is that all of these pieces, like all of this new world of AI, it's interconnected across an existing infrastructure, right? And so if you don't know about the one or two CRMs that are on the market, you're going to spend so much time needing to learn that you'll never implement the solution. And then it puts so much burden on folks like yourself to have to teach these new people to come in and understand kind of what that infrastructure looks like and how it's being used. Absolutely. So I guess one other question is we talked a little bit about teams and how these teams are being set up to start leading this effort within medical affairs. There's a lot of folks talking about who to put on that team, right? If you were going to hire, let's do two different questions. The first person you hire, the head of digital medical, who are you looking for? Right? Because you could go super technical, you could go super medical affairs experience. Who's the best person if you were going to put a first person in that role?
What I've seen, and I guess I could use myself as an example, and I've seen in other companies as well, is ensuring that you have a strong leader. That's one thing. And a leader in medical affairs who knows medical affairs. If I was selecting, I would go with somebody that knows medical affairs, that has experience in digital rather than the other
Mm,
way around, like a strong digital person who doesn't know medical affairs. Because I do say, as we mentioned earlier, we're getting a lot of these calls from these vendors, and a lot of the vendors and the external partners, they're bringing that technical
mhm,
expertise and they do have medical affairs people on board. But if you've got a strong medical affairs person that can navigate internally in the organization, knows the IT infrastructure, has good stakeholder relationships, that's extremely important and needed in order to get the adoption of a lot of these tools. But they need to be able to speak the language of medical affairs and understand and have proficiency in these
mhm.
technologies and the different tools to be able to work with the vendors. So I would say I would look for leadership, strong medical affairs experience, and some of the traits I'd look for, they have to be curious, they have to be innovative, they have to be flexible, good communication skills, because the lead role, I think, is very much about leadership, setting the tone, and being able to get these tools, projects adopted within the organization. And that's something that we can talk about as well in terms of digital transformation and bringing it into the organization and making sure that these tools are effective and utilized.
I love that. Yeah, I would agree. I think that the teams that I'm seeing with the most success, the first person, the leader is a medical affairs expert. And I think the word you used was curious, right? It's somebody who does use ChatGPT, somebody who knows enough about their CRM to be able to think of new ways of using. They might not know every widget to turn and every permission that has to be changed. Like they've got people who can do that, but they don't simply let it go to the partner, right? Without being curious, without knowing its potential and what it can do. So that curiosity, I think, is extremely important and something pretty easy to test for when you're hiring, right? You can ask questions like, tell me how you've used ChatGPT or another large language model. Tell me about the most innovative and interesting thing you've configured your CRM to accomplish. Tell me about ways that you've saved time and how much time have you saved, right, for the team. I completely agree. That curiosity in this space, because it's changing so fast, you have to be able to keep up or else you won't know what's coming and what's available.
I'd say the other thing too is that I think with any leadership position, the next step, and again, I'm more of a medical affairs leader than a digital expert, but then surrounding yourself with people that have different skills, that have that expertise that you can learn from. And I would say the next hires, you need to ensure that you do have some of that technical
Mm.
expertise. So it still needs to be a blend of having medical affairs experience but having different aspects of technical experience and technical expertise. So ensuring that you have a well-rounded team. So when you're working with these vendor partners, you have different people that are bringing different perspectives.
Yeah, I think that second layer, we need to make sure we start bringing in expertise, right? I think one of the worst experiences that I've seen is where you've got a leader who says, "Hey, I want to do digital." I don't know what that means. And so then they hire other medical affairs people who say, okay, well, I'm going to go do digital, but I don't know what that means. And then they hire another layer of medical affairs people. And you need to interfuse that. And I think that what I'm seeing is this pod system show up where you have this one leader who says, hey, I understand medical affairs. I'm curious about technology. I see opportunities to improve. And I'm going to bring in somebody who understands our data and somebody who understands our systems and somebody who understands analytics to do that. And then that's that second layer. And then when that team reaches capacity, then you might say, hey, I might want somebody to focus just on field medical digital, somebody else to focus on SciComm digital and omnichannel, and you can start to expand. But without that layer of somebody who can do the work, we end up just being in vendor management mode and we run out of capacity to be able to give leadership.
I think that's great. And that's what I'm seeing as well. And I do think you need those people within the medical affairs team, within this digital group that can also translate with the IT folks that you're working with internally. So being able to work with the IT folks, the folks that are doing the data. So you need people that can speak that language as well, but still know medical affairs.
Love it. Let's jump in to a couple of digital initiatives, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges in implementing. So, the first one that you jumped into was insights and insight generation. How are you seeing AI and digital enhancing what we already have done? Because insight generation isn't new. However, if you go to the Maps content portal, there's over 300 pieces of content in there about how to do insight generation. So we're still figuring it out and how to do it better. How is AI, how is digital helping to accelerate insights?
So I think there's like different types of AI that can be used for insights. So I think there's the analytical part where we've got this massive amounts of data and being able to cull through all that data to find the patterns and bring forward what those patterns are and identify those insights and so package them nicely. And then you start layering in what we're seeing now more so is even the generative AI and being able to make sense of it and make recommendations. So AI definitely is advancing our abilities in AI and insights.
So let's dig into insight generation. So, as we look at insights, what are some of the ways that AI and digital technologies is helping make insights more actionable or reduce the burden that it takes to generate those insights?
So AI, as we mentioned before, it's one of the hottest topics for medical affairs professionals. And through natural language processing, machine learning, applying it to our old method or to insights and the data that we have, and helping us be more efficient rather than, as I mentioned before, these manual processes where we've got MSLs, headquarters professionals going through Excel spreadsheets, CRM data to identify insights, even from ad boards and through all the notes that are taken. If we're able to apply these digital tools, utilize machine learning, natural language processing to find those kernels, the insights that are coming from that data much quicker, almost instantaneously. So that's a huge win. And I'd say now layering on generative AI to be able to look through all of that data and make recommendations and deliver reports. Those things are going to be so helpful. And I think one of the things we're seeing is moving from creation of reports by MSLs and our strategy teams and being able to share those across the organization in emails. But who's even reading those? And how much time does it take to read those reports versus being able to create dashboards that leaders can look at and use their own filters to find what's most interesting to them. So
Yeah.
I do think that AI is helping us become not only efficient, but more effective in mining the data to find the insights that are going to be meaningful for medical affairs.
The part of that analytics piece is really important because it's hard to go from this big plethora of different types of data down to a summary and an answer. And so this is one of those areas where having technical expertise that can curate out of the million data points down to the 200 on a topic and then use the AI to summarize here's what somebody's saying is going to be critical because it doesn't work like Google. Right? It's not like you could just ask everything and it knows what's important to you. You have to actually teach it.
I think that's a huge learning as well. And I think for people who use or are starting to see the benefits of something like Chat GPT, people think it's magic. You ask the question, you get an answer. And it takes a lot of time and training to get it right, to
Mm.
feed it the data, to teach it. So I think that the success of using AI, well, I guess that with anything in medical affairs and what we're learning with insights is it's not an overnight success. There's a lot of time, effort, and training that's involved, and it takes time.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm most excited about, so our platform Quello has the AI analytics piece, but the piece that I'm really excited about is actually moving AI from the 4 or 5 people that might be running reports to every single person who is providing insights. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about that we've got testers using it, it's been great, is imagine having Donna on your shoulder when you're submitting the insight and whispering, "Hey, that's not an insight." Or what you wrote as this explanation doesn't tell me why the person has the belief that you stated up above. Or, wow, you just wrote 6 paragraphs and what you meant were these 4 sentences. Just write this, and really moving AI even upstream because better data in, better insights out, right?
That would be so helpful. I think having led MSL Excellence, one of the most common trainings that we had is around insights. What are insights? How do you capture the insights? So to have a tool or a little genie that's helping you do
Or
that on the input side would be amazing.
That's awesome. What are the other 1 or 2 top digital technology advances you're seeing in medical affairs?
So another technology I'd say are profiling tools, and they've been around for a long time, but they've gotten much more sophisticated. And I think part of the sophistication just comes from the availability of the data that's being provided or that's fueling the profiling tools. So the profiling tools are helping our MSLs be so much more prepared when they're going to see their KOLs. So they're able to ask the questions almost before they're asked because they know so much about the KOL. And also with these profiling tools, they'll help fuel omni-channel and help identify the next best action. So guiding MSLs around what are the things that they should be not only asking, but doing with their KOLs. So I think this level of sophistication is only going to continue to get better. And I think that those profiling tools, and there's a number of them out there, are going to be incredibly valuable for MSLs if they're not already using them today.
Yeah, I almost see that as foundational, right? If you're going to create a technology that helps you engage with the medical community, you have to have information about that community. And some of those, I mean, we've helped implement hundreds of thousands of profiles, right? So we've worked with all the different providers. And I think one of the big important things when picking one of those providers, especially in today's digital age, is that you have access to the data, not just to the system. Because that data is one of those things that will feed, as you were saying, those next best tools, the omni-channel tools. But if it's locked away in a portal and you don't actually have access to the raw data to be able to incorporate, then it gets lost. You can't use it. And I can't tell you how many times people implemented across all the vendors. It has nothing to do with one provider versus another, where they implement profiles and then everybody gets frustrated because they go look at usage and it's so low. Nobody logs in. Nobody goes and reviews the profile before every interaction. Nobody sits down once a month and looks to see at all the changes and prioritize who to engage with. But if these digital technologies are actually there to help me say, "Hey, Donna, here's 3 people that you might want to prioritize seeing this month because something changed in their profile. And here's 3 new topics that you might want to talk to somebody about because I see you have that person on your calendar." All of a sudden, that's the type of automation that makes the stuff useful.
Well, I think that you're just raising a point around all of these tools, and that these tools are fantastic. There's so much that you can do with them. But and this we talk about digital mindset, digital transformation, and again I mentioned the reason you need to bring in a strong leader is to help people move along this curve, to
Mhm.
help them understand the value of these tools and how to use them. Because these tools are available. And as you said, a lot of the tools don't get used. And if people don't understand how to use them, how they'll benefit them, the tools will just sit there.
Yeah. Let's dig deeper into that. So, implementation, right? So, whatever the tool is, it's omni-channel, next best, CLM, approved emails, whatever they are, all of these pieces, the puzzles start to come together. What are the biggest, let's say, three challenges to effectively implementing a technology, a digital solution for medical affairs?
Well, I'd say, and I just mentioned this, is not anticipating the need for change management, thinking that if you develop a new digital tool, that everybody will use it. So part of it is ensuring that you have champions along the way, that you build it into a workflow so that you're not just adding a new tool and expecting people to use it, but they're using it in it's replacing the way they're doing something today, and they understand that. So it's not something additional that they have to do. It's changing the way they're doing something, which still is a huge effort. So I'd say that, I mean, I think that's the first thing. And would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. I think that one of the words that you used was champions, is getting people in early who can help lead that change. One of the things that I see most medical affairs professionals got to where they are because they're really smart, right? They've always had the right answer. Well, these are tools that help give you an answer, but now it's about being able to ask the right question. Right. And that transition to I know my territory better than anybody else, or I already know what the insights are, and I'm going to go through and just find the data that helps to support that. That mindset has to be beaten. It has to be stopped in order to be open to asking these technologies the questions about who could I prioritize? What is the insights? What is the next best thing I could be doing? If you're not open to being able to ask that question because you think you already know the answer, then it'll go to waste.
I guess you asked top three things. I said
Yeah, so
one
that's
is not
one.
anticipating the change. Two, we talked about this a little bit as well, is not having some of those foundational processes when you implement something. And if it's just a new tool, but you don't have the processes that are aligned with it, or the processes don't match with the tool or the platform, I think that will be very difficult for the team to embrace the new technology.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Remember that scene from what was the old show where she's doing the pies and the conveyor belt just starts going faster and faster and she can't keep up? That's what's
I
gonna
Love
happen.
Lucy, yeah.
Well, I love Lucy, right? And so if you don't have a good insights process and you put in a tool to make it go faster, you're just gonna get more faster bad insights, right? Or if you don't have a process for prioritizing and planning within your territory, and all of a sudden you start getting all these suggestions of things you can do, but you don't have a way to manage it or prioritize it, you're just going to get overwhelmed. There's this fear that AI will take over our jobs. And I love the saying that it's not going to be AI that takes over its jobs. It's going to be people who use AI that's going to take over our jobs because they can do things faster. They can complement their strengths with a tool that helps overcome some of their weaknesses. You can do things that like even like basic things like writing an email to a thought leader. Imagine being able to write one sentence that describes what you're trying to say and hit go and it writes a nice email for you. There's all these things, but you have to be ready for it.
I would say the last thing when it comes to implementation and one of the challenges is I think if you're not preparing people in that it's not going to be super easy and it's not going to be flawless, it's not going to be perfect the first time. With a lot of these new technologies, as we mentioned, we have to train it, or you need to be trained as well. And so there's going to be trials and tribulations. It's going to take a while to get it right. It is going to have to be adapted and adjusted. And so people need to be resilient and people need to see where it's headed. I think if you're not, you could easily give up, go to the old ways of working, and you'll say this tool doesn't work. So I think that's a huge risk.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that we've in the past have tried to coddle think is the right word, especially our
Wonderful.
field teams when we're like, hey, we want to make sure that this is perfect before it goes out. Right. And so you spend all this time getting the configurations right and the training right and all the communications right. And then you do all the support. This new genre of technology is very iterative. Take next best as an example. The first 10 suggestions I get might not be very useful, but there's feedback mechanisms. I decline this suggestion and here is why. It gets smarter, right? Or, hey, here's the email template I suggest that you send to this person based on the conversation you just had. No, I'm going to edit it and it gets smarter, right? But if you don't contribute back in because you just think that it's not ready for you, it will never get ready for you.
I agree. I mean, it is a catch-22 a bit though, because it is an iterative process. Like I've absolutely seen that it will get better and it does get better. But our compliance folks don't necessarily want to know that
Well,
it's not working the first time because that's where, from a risk perspective, they're a little leery on all these tools. And especially now hearing like, oh, you have to train it, it's not perfect. So that's not something that they
yeah.
want to hear.
That's right. Well, have you had to overcome some of those compliance conversations yet? What are some of the key messages, the key things that help do that?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and this is with anything digital or non-digital, is just getting them on board very early and helping them understand what you're trying to do, working with them as a partner and helping them see, again, from the beginning, what the goal is and helping them understand what we perceive as risks. They'll have their own as well. And it's having that ongoing conversation throughout the build. And I think that's the best thing to do because this is all new for them as well.
And this goes well before any of this digital technology. When I've ever gone to compliance and said, "Hey, I need your help figuring out how to solve this problem," before instead of, "Hey, I just bought something. Could you please make sure I can use it?" Right? It goes so much smoother. And I think that with this particular version of technologies that we're talking about, one of the misnomers that I hear compliance ask, and it's the same exact fear that field teams and leaders have, is that automation will occur without the human intervention. And I think that there's this baby step where it is better to automate a list of things that a human might take action on versus having that automation take the action by itself without the human involved until you're confident enough that it's accurate all the time. Right. So I know I was with an MSL team and they were afraid that when approved email got turned on, that all these emails were going to go to their HCPs from them and they wouldn't know what they were saying to people and it's not going to sound right. And I said, nope, like all it's going to do is prepare the draft for you so that you can do it in 2 seconds instead of 30 seconds. That's the idea.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think we hear a lot about the human in the loop. And I think that
Mhm.
will be the case in pharma for a very long time, if not always. But as you said, the gains that you get in efficiency of getting that first draft, getting those suggestions, getting an outline is so much better than starting from scratch and having to just put the initial pen to paper and having to think about it. So if you can get started or get you to an endpoint, even if you have to revise it, you're way better off.
Way better. Um, as you think about implementation, what is your perspective on collaboration with commercial and R&D on these platforms? I think there's a lot of times where they're further ahead. They've implemented some of these platforms, whether it's CRM, insights, they've already bought some type of profile data. How important is it that we're on the same instance of these things using the same technologies?
I don't always think that you need to be on the exact same instance. I think that what you develop needs to be able to talk, whether it's through data lakes, ensuring that the data is harmonized. Again, it doesn't have to be the same platform, same system, but there does need to be an ability to talk between the systems. And I do think it's incredibly important to ensure that you have communication across the groups because there's efficiencies that you can have if you use the same platforms. Again, you don't have to, but if you use
Right.
the same platforms and use the same technology, you can get a lot of efficiency through just talking and understanding who are you using and learning from one another.
Yeah. I think that whether it's the same platform or not, we need to be approaching the governance around these things in a joint way, right? Because all of a sudden, access to data and automation around that data, we still need to follow appropriate use of the information. Again, if you wouldn't do it as a human, why would you tell a computer to do it? Even if commercial is building an automation engine and they have this idea that, oh, I would love to know all of medical's interactions because I might take an action on that. Well, medical needs to be involved in that conversation. What's appropriate to share? When would you share it? Why are you sharing it? And same thing going the other way, right? I was working with a team around just gathering consent to do digital communication. And they were really excited to have medical participate in this because people say yes to medical sometimes more often than they'll say yes to commercial. But now you have to say, well, we have to protect that channel because you have to protect that relationship or else it won't be useful later. So
Great point.
we need to be involved in those conversations. And I think the more when you get on one platform, it's easier because you're not doing the work twice, right?
Mhm.
But you need to all be in the same conversation. Okay, I think I'm going to ask you one more question, Donna. We're going to get personal here. So, medical affairs is getting better and better year over year, right? The leaders are becoming more strategic, they're becoming more digitally savvy, they're getting better explaining their impact. Medical affairs is getting stronger year over year. As a medical excellence leader in the digital space or otherwise, for you personally to remain the guide, the trusted partner that helps build those processes and build those teams, you need to be getting better twice as fast as they are. What are you learning personally right now? What is the top 2 or 3 things that you are investing your personal time to become the leader you need to be for tomorrow?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, one thing is in this area, in this digital space, I am going to continue to learn about these new technologies, learning from experts in the field so that I have an understanding of what they are, who's out there. I mean, that's just incredibly important for me because I have the years of medical affairs experience. I have a great network in medical affairs. I have a great understanding of the function, the sub functions. So for me, it's making sure that I understand the new digital technologies, platforms. So that's one thing. I think the second, and I think this is just more personal because of the type of leader I am, is just continuing to build strong relationships, build my network, communicate often and frequently with leaders within my company, the different stakeholder groups, outside the company, with others in medical affairs. And for me, that means that I can continue to learn. I can continue to build my network, the strong relationships, so that I can be effective both internally and externally.
Absolutely love that. One of my deepest learnings in the last couple of years is most problems are who problems, not how problems. And the more that you've got your network, you know somebody who could solve almost any problem. So just continuing to build that network is so important right now. There's going to be too much to be the expert on everything.
Well, I find that right now is that with an extensive network, I know I don't know everything. I'm far from it, but I usually know somebody that knows the answer or somebody that knows the answer and that I
Right.
can connect with. And if you're generous, as you mentioned in the beginning, people are generous back and people generally want to help. And we're in a competitive environment. We all work at different companies, but at the same time, I think we all want to learn and grow together. And I think in everybody's corporate statement, it's all about patience. And that's why we do this. And so if we can help each other do that, then we're all better for it.
I am so glad that you were generous yet again with your time and your experience for everybody who's listening. And I really look forward to seeing what the next year brings for you.
Likewise. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for the opportunity.